Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, August 9th, 2019. Oh, I missed it. It was 8/8 yesterday. Okay, well, no big deal. Now I've said it. So here we are. How do you want to handle the day? I can't even decide which direction to go in. We'll start, how about this, with Bill's morning tweet, because this really kind of sums everything up. In the middle of all this chaos, right? Daily Coast Radio is live now. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Says Trump is going on an extended vacation at one of his golf resorts. I mean, I only say it because it's true, but now the question is it the one with the 80 major health code violations or the one with only 60? Find out now by listening to the program. We'll investigate. And, of course, you want to stay out of those places where no human being would want a vacation, let's say. I assume that by the around the end of the show, you're going to have the president out there on the lawn shouting answers at half-heard questions over the noise of the helicopter set to airlift him to his next golfing vacation. But, he needs a break, quite honestly, after the arduous work of flying to 2 hospitals in 2 cities where apparently, I guess as it turns out, they checked into 2 different hospitals in El Paso looking for somebody who would be willing to allow him to visit. And unable to turn anybody up, of course, everyone's talking about this one. He managed to arrange, and this is actually I'm normalizing it by saying it this way. He managed to arrange a photo opportunity with the, 2-month-old? 4-month-old baby who was orphaned in the El Paso attack when both parents were killed trying to shield this baby from the killer's bullets. So we now have an orphaned baby, and the Trump and his wife Melania actually posed for a big, wide, grinning, smiling, thumbs-up photo with the baby, who was not in the hospital, but rather was at home, or not at home because parents had been killed, although maybe they were taking care of the baby in the baby's home. I don't know. Obviously had been, they'd found some relatives, I guess, to take care of the baby, but wasn't at the hospital. And Trump snapped his fingers and put his people on it and said, I want you to smuggle me that baby. I want you to traffic in that child and bring them back over here to me because it's totally safe with me. I mean, what happened was they couldn't find anybody who would agree to meet with him and be photographed with him at the El Paso hospital. So they found a child too young to either protest on their own or to give consent to being handled by the Trumps, and grabbed that one instead. I mean, what can I tell you? The guy traffics in children. And you've just watched it happen. But because we have to normalize it, it was a photo opportunity, and the president was comforting the child who will never have any understanding of what the president was saying to them. But that's what can I tell you? That's where they are. And everybody's really either enjoying it because they are pro-Trump or is aghast at it because they are normal human beings and can see what's going on. Word is he just kind of lacks the empathy gene and can't figure out what's going on, and thinks that these thumbs up photos are things that, I guess he thinks that they lift the spirits, and anyone would be happy to have one. So maybe that's what's going on. That's my best possible spin on it. The other interesting story out there today is, let's see if we can piece this thing together. I could probably spend all day on it. I will try not to spend all day on it, but let's see if we can. We'll track down the story as reported, I guess, in one of the, I don't know whether this is a local outlet or nearby, or it's not the Washington Post, though. That's the serious news here. This is Springfield, Missouri. Springfield police arrest armed person at Walmart on Republic. I guess this must be a local outlet, because who else would describe it as the Walmart on Republic? Which Springfield, Missouri Walmart are you talking about? The one on Republic. Republic what? Republic Road is the answer to that one. Dateline, Springfield. They're giving you a little breaking news noise there. The Springfield Police Department tweeted out Thursday that an armed man was arrested at the Walmart neighborhood market. I like the way they put that. It's capitalized. The Walmart neighborhood market. It's a line of sub-genre, I guess, of Walmart outlets. We've got the Walmart superstores, you got the Walmart this and that, and then now there's a Walmart neighborhood market, which is meant to be a smaller scale, usually supermarket style place, as opposed to the super duper market, super center. Well, I don't know what they call them, super centers, but I don't know how you would differentiate between. Once you get to supermarket, how many other things that rhyme with super can you stick in there? Anyway, the Walmart neighborhood market, sort of different from the super centers that you see. And it was on West Republic Road. And what a story. Lieutenant Mike Lucas with the Springfield Police confirmed it was a white man in his 20s, so you know what that means. Yeah, so that was the fear, was that he was there to kill everybody, which is amazing. I think you're seeing the story develop in my head right now. If you haven't already seen it develop outside of my head on Twitter, and not only my Twitter feed, but pretty much everybody else who has had to deal with this story. This is really interesting. So, Mike Lucas, the lieutenant with the Springfield Police, said it was a white man in his 20s armed with a rifle that was taken into custody. That is to say, it was the white man taken into custody. You can't take a gun into custody. It's against the Constitution. His intent, this is real, what a quote. This is fantastic. His intent, they don't know it, right? So he says his intent was not to cause peace or comfort to anybody that was in the business. In fact, he's lucky to be alive still, to be honest, he told reporters. In other words, he's lucky that armed bystanders didn't gun him down. Because that did happen. Apparently an armed customer, an off-duty fireman, pulled a weapon and detained him while the police were called. There was a general panic in the store, as I have understood from skimming other stories. The fire alarm was pulled, and then this guy detained him. We'll read on the story here in ozarksfirst.com, by the way, is where we're reading. Lucas said Thursday evening that no shots were fired and nobody was injured. However, the man is still in custody. They have a photo of him with his face blurred out here, but I've seen him in some other outlets where they didn't bother to blur out the face. And, he's dressed in what they like to call tactical gear. He's got the vest on. I understand from some of the other reports he had body armor on. He's got an AR-15 strapped to him in one of those tactical, I don't know what you call the setup, the shoulder holster, the shoulder loop, and but basically, and all the pockets on the vest filled with additional magazines, etc. The issue here, of course, is he looks exactly like an open carry protester who might be going armed to the store in order to prove that he has the right to do this, to normalize the open display of weaponry, as is usually the claim for these guys who do that. Or I guess sometimes, though, open carry protesters, honestly, I guess if you're being scrupulous about this, the open carry protesters tend to show up in t-shirt and shorts and a ball cap, but with an AR-15 slung over their shoulder. But occasionally they show up this way. Now, who else shows up exactly this way besides mass shooters who are about to wreak havoc inside a Walmart, whether it be supercenter or neighborhood market? Who else looks like this? The 3%er militia, the Oath Keeper militias who show up to provide security, in scare quotes, at, let's say, events as diverse as the Charlottesville alt-right Unite the Right March or the Bundy Ranch. But they're just, exercising their right to bear arms in public. Who else looks exactly like this? The counter-protesters who show up outside of a Moms Demand meeting or an actual rally or something like that, or a protest held outside by Moms Demand. But just as often, I've read stories of the local Moms Demand chapter meeting at Applebee's for lunch or whatever. I don't know whether they meet at Applebee's or not. But as you know, all the smart intellectuals who write at the New York Times think all of these humble folk eat at Applebee's. So I'm going to go with that formulation. But when they have gathered for planning meetings for lunch somewhere and are found out by the local gun nuts, they tend to show up outside the restaurant dressed exactly like this. And if the police are called, they say, I'm just exercising my right to bear arms. I'm not here to intimidate anyone. Now, of course, they're not there to cause peace or comfort for the women inside organizing as the local Moms Demand chapter, but nobody gets arrested because it's not illegal, because we have stupid gun laws in this country. And we've been saying for a million years that the real problem with this is that you can't tell the difference between a mass shooter and a militia person there to cause peace and comfort for others and just to display their constitutionally guaranteed rights, etc. You can't tell the difference until someone starts shooting. And we've been there before. And yes, we actually have had shooters who have been parading down the street with their weaponry and had people say, I don't know whether to call the police on this guy or not. Or they have called the police and the police have said, is he shooting? No. Well, then he, could be an open carry protest. It happened in Colorado, probably about 3-4 years ago now. I mean, we talked about it on the show when it happened way back when, and we've brought it up since. But now this is real interesting just to watch this formulation come back to bite them here. Now, what's really interesting is the very next paragraph of the Ozarks' first piece here. After the cop says, well, he's lucky he's even alive. He says, we definitely have some crimes here, he said. That's actually the problem. You definitely don't have any crimes. If it's an open carry protester, you would never say there were crimes. As a matter of fact, a week ago, if you had called the cops on this guy would be all over the news or on YouTube saying, I triggered the libs. This is a liberal anti-gun panic that I'm just a law-abiding citizen. I'm here to protect these people. And now they're actually calling the cops on me. Can you imagine the nerve? Meanwhile, this morning's discussion on Twitter of this incident includes the tweets from the right-wing outlet, the Daily Wire. On the right, they are already proclaiming this a huge victory for armed citizenry because the fireman, good guy with a gun, pulled his gun to stop the other maybe good guy with a gun who's dressed as the militia man here. And this is already this morning on the right proof that an armed citizenry can stop a mass shooting before it begins. Because the guy had a rifle and he was dressed in tactical gear. He's obviously a mass shooter. But again, like I said, last week, that guy would have been the big gun hero. And if you had called the police on him, you would be the anti-gun libtard who panicked at the sight of, it's just a tool. It's an inanimate object. It doesn't kill people, right? That's where you would have been stuck. But here, the good folk, the salt of the earth of Springfield, Missouri, were rightly panicked by, well, I don't know. By what? We can't be sure. But they're pretty sure they're right and pretty sure you're wrong for having the same feelings, but too early. You were pre-wrong. That was the problem, I guess. Or maybe you were just wrong too early. Anyway, according to Lieutenant Lucas, an off-duty fireman, here's the information we were looking for, who was at the Walmart, is to thank, in some part, for the young man's arrest. We have the national anthem cued here because we really should be I don't think we do. That's one thing we don't have. And that's amazing. We must be, what is this? Chapo Trop House? Chapo Hoo-Ha? What's the name of it? I keep saying Chop House. I think it's a restaurant. Chapo Trap House. That's the one. We must be socialists here. That's what's happening. Okay, well, at any rate, we don't have the national anthem to stand up and salute here, as we say that he's to thank in some part, some small part, some large part. It doesn't say. Some part. For now, investigators will review both the Walmart security footage and the armed 20-year-old's social media profiles. That will be interesting. I understand from one of the previous reports that he probably does have a social media profile because the what do we call him? The gunman was filming on his phone when he was apprehended, which is, of course, the standard MO of the YouTube-based open carry protester. YouTube, as we all know, is filled with videos made by open carry protesters who basically carry their weapons where they know they will provoke a reaction and then film the police responding to them and then film themselves saying, well, according to blah, 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 and they read the statutes to them. They love to cite the statute. I mean, granted, that's cop speak, so they're trying to speak their language. And they talk the cops out of harassing them anymore. Or sometimes the ones that get posted are the ones where they're really aggrieved because the cops argue with them or don't immediately bow and back away, but they take a few minutes. I can't tell you how many of these open carry protest videos are 5-minute films of cops being extraordinarily courteous to them. And these guys are furious that they were even noticed, which is, of course, why they were marching down the street with a gun, with a camera out. They didn't want to be noticed. It's a very weird bunch of people. And, quite honestly, if I look at this objectively, over the long term, it's probably best that they do get stopped and considered to be active shooters, or rather potential mass shooters at the time, because, well, a lot of them are. I mean, let's not forget that as I saw circulated the other day, a picture of the Tarrant County, the open carry Tarrant County, Texas group was circulated the other day as though it were a new protest that was taking place in the wake of the Walmart shooting. It was not. It was a picture from 2014 or so that I saw being circulated. But don't forget that the Tarrant County group included in it for many years a woman who eventually ended up killing her husband and stepdaughter and is now in jail for a double murder. But she was a regular at all the protests. And, these people are law-abiding gun owners until they're not. And the thing about guns is it doesn't give you a great deal of time to deal with them during your transition, let's say, right? So one of them ended up as a double murderer. By the way, one of the most, one of the gun enthusiasts who leapt to the defense of the open carry protesters immediately after this woman was arrested and convicted of her double murder, was the guy from bearingarms.com, whose name escapes me, and I want to say is, Bob Jones, but it's probably not. It's Bob something else. What was the name of that guy? I should run through. I'll have to look up all these old articles and stuff. But what was his? Bearing Arms was the name of his. Bob Owens, that's the guy. And he wrote an article saying, again, the triggered libs, they're jumping out. They're going to have a field day with this armed or open carry protester who became just suddenly, for no real reason, and without, the use of any tools or preparation whatsoever, became a double murderer from out of nowhere, seemingly from out of nowhere. They're going to have a field day. They're going to use this against open carriers, and I resent it. And I'm Bob Owens of Bearing Arms, and I'm a level-headed, straight-shooting gun rights activist, and I'll tell it like it is. Until, of course, I commit suicide by gun and kill myself in the street corner outside my home because, and I didn't do it with a noose, and I didn't take poison, and I didn't have to find a ladder or a swimming pool to do it with. I used my trusty sidearm to do it. I just found it really kind of interesting. The arc of that story, right? Oh my God, they're carrying guns through Walmart. They could be mass shooters. No one knows that they're not. Oh, you liberals, you're always panicking about guns. Don't you understand they're tools and inanimate objects? And we're trying to normalize the appearance of these guns in public shopping places because we're protecting all of you. And then, of course, you have enough Walmart shootings, even the people who believe that the next protester is a mass shooter and that you were wrong the whole time. And how dare you? And by the way, the person that took you to task is also dead by gun in all of this by the time you read this. I just found that really kind of fascinating as an arc of a story. Anyway, so there's lots of people circulating this story and discussing it, and there's no other way of viewing it. Here's the Daily Wire tweet that I was thinking of. Let me open it up, and I'll read their version of the story. Breaking, their tweet says, good guy with gun stops potential attack at Walmart after man shows up with rifle, body armor. And their full report here, let's see if it reveals anything else here. Written by Ryan Saavedra, who's a bit of a Twitter personality himself. The Daily Wire, I now see, they got a banner ad up here. Is that Ben Shapiro's outlet? Apparently, according to this banner ad, he figures prominently in all this. Is at the front of this lineup of their writers, stroking his chin because that's the international sign for intellectualism. So he's doing that. Thank you. So Ryan Saavedra writes, an off-duty firefighter who had a firearm with him stopped a potential attack. That's the lead. Stopped a potential attack from taking place at a Walmart in Missouri after a 20-year-old man showed up to the store with a rifle, body armor, and over 100 rounds of ammunition. And I don't want to defend the guy. Like, I think the guy should have been apprehended too. The point is that a week ago, had I said that, I would have been a libtard. But if I say that now, I'm an awesome conservative. I don't really know how this stuff works. Maybe it doesn't. Now, I love it. Here's the same quote. This is a spectacular quote from the lieutenant here. His intent was not to cause peace or comfort to anybody that was in the business. And again, I defy you. Take a look at the picture of the guy and Google. I guess let's see. What would happen if I go to Google Images and I say, let's say, open carry, should I say counter protest? Protest moms demand. Open carry protest moms demand. That's my Google search term. And let me hit the images here. And we'll see what we get. Here we are. Our first hit on the images is from USA Today. Armed protesters rattle Texas mom's gun control meeting. That's the story I was talking about before. What do you know? It's hit number 1. Didn't even have to search for it. This, by the way, dated November 11th, 2013, back when it was liberal panic to not like armed people showing up places. The sudden appearance of about 40 armed men. 40 armed men. How long do you think it would have been before they called the cops on 40 armed men in Springfield yesterday? 40 armed men outside a Dallas area, restaurant this weekend was the latest confrontation between an open carry gun rights group and a mothers group advocating gun control that was meeting inside. Police monitored the incident at the Blue Mesa Grill in Arlington, Texas, but took no action because it is legal to carry long guns openly in Texas. Wasn't the Walmart shooter from Arlington? I don't know. Police monitored the incident, right, but took no action because it's legal to carry long guns in Texas. We are aware that a group did gather in a shopping area in Arlington Saturday. Tiara Ellis Richard of the Arlington Police Office of Communications said in an email to USA Today, officers were notified and arrived at the location. There were no issues that we were aware of, and no arrests occurred. One of the four women, 40 armed men. One of the four women who were meeting Saturday tried to file a police complaint on Monday, but failed because she was told that no law had been violated. Now, Springfield is in Missouri. Their laws are different. And there, though, laws were definitely broken, right? Didn't they say that one? That was it. We definitely have some crimes here. Whereas over here in Texas, we definitely don't. Sorry. So, a spokeswoman for Moms Demand passed on that bit of information. Shannon Watts, founder of the National Gun Control Organization, said the mothers were holding a private meeting, not a rally, at the restaurant. She founded her group in the wake of the killings in Newtown, Connecticut. Of course, Watts, whose organization is based in Indianapolis, said she was not at the restaurant at the time, but was speaking on behalf of the four mothers, including a school teacher who wanted to remain anonymous. The Open Carry Texas contingent, that's who did it, which included men, women, and children, and double murderers as well, were armed with about 24 semi-automatic rifles, which are classified as long guns in Texas and can be legally carried openly. The two groups have been at odds since the mothers group successfully lobbied Starbucks to ban the open carrying of weapons in its coffee shops. In April, a group of armed men also showed up at an Mother's Demand gun control rally in Indianapolis, Watts said. I said "and" because they were referred to as MDA, Moms Demand Action, right, MDA. We were surrounded, she says, by armed men, including some openly carrying loaded semi-automatic rifles, Watts said. Many of our moms had children with them. Unfortunately, this is not a unique situation, see? It's happened in many states, including Indiana, Ohio, Oregon, Michigan, and now Texas. If open carry is allowed, our rallies are often attended by armed protesters. And that was all, like I said, liberal panic. Bunch of wimps who don't like guns. They have gun hatred. That's what it was. Well, you know how they're full of those guys, I guess, in Springfield, Missouri. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Look, Scott Charles has the same question here. He was tweeting just an hour ago. I'm curious about the lack of pearl clutching when numerous guys outfitted exactly like this. He includes the photo that's in the tweet of KARK4 News about the Springfield incident. I'm curious about the lack of pearl clutching when numerous guys outfitted exactly like this show up to Moms Demand gatherings in an effort to intimidate them. And of course, I'm telling you, one of the more infamous incidents, but just one of many, when they actually have rallies or protests, God forbid, they should be exercising, you know, those First Amendment rights, freedom of speech that everybody is now concerned about on the right, and you can't censor that sort of thing, and how horrible is it, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we're back into the same stupid loop. But when they get together, their excuse always is, we're just open carrying, which is our right. We just happen to want to do it around in circles around these 15 women with their children who are gathered here exercising their First Amendment rights. We just want to exercise our Second Amendment rights in circles around them. What's wrong with that? Now, of course, that it bothers people in Springfield, Missouri, we definitely have crimes here. That's probably the biggest, that's the most amazing thing. And I guess, well, maybe after the show, we'll try and make that clear on Twitter a little bit, right? I'd love to contrast that piece of the USA Today article with that one. Officers were notified, but there were no issues that we were aware of, and no arrests occurred. And you can't make a police report because no law had been violated. We definitely have some crimes here. No laws were violated. They are two different states. We could always point to that. All right, where do we leave off on this? Because was there more information to be gleaned from the USA Today thing? Yes. I wanted to back up my earlier statement in commentary on this thing. As I said, there was in April, that's where we left off, that Shannon Watts was saying that's happened in a number of states. Indiana, Ohio, Oregon, Michigan, and Texas. Probably a few more since then still. Now, in the Arlington incident, Shannon Watts said, the OCT, Open Carry Texas, apparently learned of the meeting through Facebook. In other words, they were monitoring the Moms Demand Action Facebook page, found out they were meeting at the, Blue Mesa Grill, and just decided to carry their weapons around that restaurant for no particular reason, just because they love the Second Amendment so much. But there's a quote here that helps identify the operatives of the Open Carry Texas group that went. The mothers, were sitting in the restaurant and all of a sudden saw cars pull up, and these people were getting out of the cars pulling semi-automatic rifles out of their trunks, Watts said. That's a worrying thing to see. But then it was perfectly reasonable. Corey Watkins, with a K, who organized the protests, told National Review's Charles C.W. Cook, I wonder what he's tweeting about today, that, quote, we were just out there peacefully assembling. Now, if Corey Watkins' name is familiar to you, congratulations, good memory. You may remember him as Stupid Fedora Gun Guy from way back when in Texas. In other words, he's the leader of not just Open Carry Texas, or not just a participant in Open Carry Texas, the statewide organization, but the leader of the Open Carry Tarrant County splinter group, who at some point was sort of somehow kicked out of or disassociated from the statewide Open Carry Texas group because they were too annoying, too radical, too difficult to control. But it was the Tarrant County group whose pictures were so widely circulated of their stroll through, actually it was a Target store back in 2014, not a Walmart, photographed carrying a package of Oreos, one of their members was. He used, Corey Watkins is the guy in the dumb fedora. He wears a hat to all those things, and you probably would recognize him if you saw him. He was ostracized, I think, from the larger, wider Open Carry Texas thing. His other sideline is, interestingly enough, filming police traffic stops, because, of course, he's worried about the police state taking over, and he carries his weapons in part to exercise his Second Amendment right to stop the police state, except then he found out that most of the people were black, and I guess that's the end of that protest. I've not heard more about that one. Anyway, but yeah, it was Open Carry Tarrant County, led by Corey Watkins. It was the small splinter group whose number included what was her name? I'll have to go look her up. The double murderer. Let's see. I'll just do my tweeting here. Open Carry Tarrant County murder. Let's just Google that. There we are. Texas Monthly is the first hit for that one. After an Open Carry Tarrant County member after an Open Carry Tarrant County member was charged with shooting her husband and his daughter, all sides of the gun debate got ugly. So there you go. And I think this is the one that mentions the defense of, not only that, it mentions Bob Owens, but also mentions Daily Kos, because all sides are bad, as you know. This is interesting. So this is from December 15th, 2014. The woman's name, by the way, Veronica Dunnachie, Dunnachie, you'll never guess what town she's from, Arlington. Isn't that odd? By the way, was I right about that? Was it El Paso? I don't know. The El Paso shooter, was he from Arlington? Let's see if I can figure that one out. Who's going to make that available to me? No, he's from Allen, Texas. And is that close? I am not really actually sure about where Allen lies. Let's look at that. Let's check out the Google Maps and see whether they can answer the question. How far between Allen, Texas, and let's first of all identify where Allen is. I think they did say in the reports over the weekend that he was from a Dallas suburb, right? Allen, Texas, and Arlington. So let's see. Just out of curiosity, Google Maps puts them at about 50 miles apart, which is not super close, but both are Dallas suburbs. Arlington, for those of you not in Texas, a suburb to the west of Dallas. Allen, I don't know if they would even call, is it a suburb? Is it an exurb? But to the northeast. So they're on opposite sort of sides of town. I would say if Dallas is the center of the clock here, Arlington is at about 9 o'clock and Allen at about 1 o'clock. So, okay, it's a fairly significant distance. But so was it a significant distance from Allen, Texas to El Paso? So they're probably from different counties even. So anyway, the Tarrant County people were crazy enough all by themselves. So just wanted to get her name on the record there, though. Veronica Dunici was associated with the Tarrant County group, and what do you know if she isn't a double murderer? And I mentioned that down here in the body of the article, there's how do they set this up? Over on Alan Combs's Liberal Land website, remember, now he's dead too, but he didn't kill himself with a gun. So there you go. Over on his Liberal Land website, for example, the gloating came quickly. A post went up scouring Facebook for shots of Dunici with other open carry members with a shockingly snide tone for a story that involved two people that were just murdered. They have, of course, shockingly snide tones usually on the right-wing websites when people are murdered by illegal aliens, but whatever, as they like to put it. Here she is looking like every other open carry activist. Size matters, am I right? The post uses a caption of a shot of Dunici preparing to fire a large weapon. Get it? So, let's see. That's a fairly condescending way to make a point, but with such a heated topic, perhaps it's also to be expected. Over on an open carry Tarrant County Facebook page, meanwhile, members expressed a range of emotions. Many were mourning members of their community, which Liberal Lands post describes as the sads. Boo-hoo. To be certain, but let's see. Also statements like, I knew her and I'm not that surprised, from Bobby Thomas. Many people die every day. The circumstance is no different from all others, says Hathaway. And anti-gun groups are going to go to town on that one, from Fred Guzman. That Guzman's immediate reaction to the loss of members of his community was to worry about the political fallout. Shows how quickly dead bodies can become cudgels to beat home a point. Both sides, you see. And based on the reaction from Liberal Land, Daily Kos, and more, Guzman's predictions were also accurate. They're pointing here to, as it happens, a post by Hunter about the open carry activist who rallied at Target and other businesses arrested for double murder. What a gloaty headline that is. Anyway, now they go on to do some more criticism. Then over on the gun rights blog bearingarms.com, the story about Dunici runs with the headline, Bad Apple, in all capital letters, suggesting that she's an outlier who in no way represents the group. The blog goes on to assert that, I don't know if we need to read that, but once again, Bearing Arms, the article, of course, as I mentioned, written by Bob Owens, Bad Apple, Texas open carry supporter arrested for double homicide. Now, he's not arrested in the end or charged in a homicide, Bob Owens. It's just should be noted that within, I think, probably, let's say, 3 years of writing this article, Bob Owens was dead by gun 2. Just going to lay that out there and let you decide what that's supposed to mean. All right. Let's finish up the USA Today article. No more article hopping. Oh, and then we can go and see whether Charles C.W. Cook is hailing the arrest in Springfield or not. So here's Corey Watkins, though, being quoted by Charles Cook in the National Review, talking about showing up outside of the restaurant where 4 Moms Demand organizers were having lunch. We walked down. When we were in the parking lot, one of them called us an expletive, but that was it. Watts said the patrons of the Blue Mesa Grill were terrified. They felt like in an armed ambush and had, I assume she meant they were in an armed ambush and had no idea why it was taking place, Watts said. She said one mom went from table to table to explain what was going on. Chris Barton, the CFO of Blue Mesa Grill, did you know they had to have a CFO? Said the manager called 911 at 11:35 a.m. shortly after the armed group arrived. When the manager called, he told the police dispatcher what was going on. Barton said, they said that if they are having a peaceful demonstration, they are within their legal rights. Can you imagine that happening over at Springfield, Missouri yesterday? He said the police did arrive as the group was leaving the restaurant area to walk to a nearby Hooters because of their respect for women. Watts said, however, that police told them on Monday that officers were already on the scene, keeping an eye on the incident. The mothers group posted a photo online of the armed men outside the restaurant. Open Carry Texas, however, reposted the same photo and added their own photo that was taken around the same time and included a message. And the basic message here was, I guess they were upset that the photo that made it look like the group was lining up in some sort of shooting formation because it was taken from the side. If photographed from the front, you would see that they were in fact assembling for a photo and not getting ready to shoot. They were on their knees in front to make way for the second row to be visible in the photograph, which is entirely possible. But this was their proof that everything was peaceful. And it was peaceful. It's just, we're just saying you can't tell, and things can change on a moment's notice when the guns are involved. Anyway, let's see. Anything more to this one? Open Carry Texas says on its Facebook page its purpose was to educate Texans about their right to openly carry rifles and shotguns in a safe manner, and to condition Texans to feel safe around law-abiding citizens that choose to carry them. It also seeks to pass less restrictive open carry laws, especially pistols, which cannot be openly carried legally in Texas, and to foster a cooperative relationship with police with an eye towards preventing negative encounters. Kelly Bowman, a Houston activist with Moms Demand Action, said her group is enemy number one to the open carry groups. She said the incident in Arlington was to confront, and that there was no mistake what their intent was. Bowman said the Open Carry Texas group has been very high profile in recent months, including holding an unprecedented rally in front of the Alamo. On Sunday, an Open Carry group walked through a residential area of Kennedale, Texas, near Arlington, videotaping their interaction with the police officer. See? The group then posted the incident on YouTube, just like I told you, including their contention that they are not obligated to give police their ID. Yeah, and that's the main MO of your YouTube open carry protester, too. So we'll keep an eye on this and see how this one comes out and what facts emerge, if any, about the nature of the incident in Springfield, Missouri. I'd be curious to keep an eye on that one. Let's see. By the way, is Charles C.W. Cook tweeting today? I don't know what his Twitter handle. Well, it's Charles C.W. Cook. That's not hard. So, okay. Let's take a look and see if anything's going on with regard to... no, he's on vacation, I guess. There's nothing since July 18th, so we're not going to get any answers on that one until it's too late and the experiment has been polluted and he's already figured out what the actual situation is. All right, I'm just kind of curious how that was going to go, but no answer there. Good. I'm glad he's taking a vacation. All right, moving on. And maybe I should check in on what's happening on Twitter here. Am I missing anything that is coming in by way of comment? So far, so good. Okay, let's see what else we have to check up on. I guess here's a story suggestion from Kate Sherrill from last night. I left that one there, figuring we'd get to that. They're not in Missouri, but in Mississippi, the other M state that people sometimes confuse with Missouri. Absolutely wild. Mississippi election officials found a missing thumb drive of votes that changed the leader in a state Senate race. This according to the tweet of Sam Levine, who is, as far only I can tell you, he's a blue check mark guy. I'll go look him up, tell you who he is. Here we are. Sam Levine, voting rights reporter at HuffPost. Excellent. Okay, now I'm up to speed on who's doing what here. So Kate Sherrill shares Sam's tweet here. Got to get back to it. One of the candidates, he continues in his tweet, is now up by 1 vote. Wow. And there are 3 affidavit votes yet to be certified. We better go and check in on that one. And look, how do you like this? A HuffPost reporter who thinks this thing is absolutely wild, and he's tweeting out a story, and it's not to his own coverage of it in the HuffPost, but rather to, I guess, local coverage from the Sun Herald by Alyssa Newton. Congratulations. Thank you. What a great public service you've done there, Sam. Not that you're not entitled to tweet out your own story, and you should, and I hope you already did, if you did one at this point. Not that you're not entitled to do it, but sometimes in the first instance, the temptation is to wait until you write your own story and then tweet that out. But this is nice. This is a good share here. Lost thumb drive changes Coast Senate race, but 3 votes hang in the balance, Alyssa tells us. I got to scroll past an ad or 2 here, or 3. Apparently it's going to pop up again. I love the new feature on websites where they put up a video, and if you scroll past the video, it helpfully says, wait a minute, you scrolled past the video. You might still want to see this video in miniature, which will grab and then transport down to the field in which you're actually reading, because you couldn't possibly have agency of your own and not want to see that and have scrolled to a portion of the page that you were interested in. You missed this. You go back, turn back. You missed it. It's like driving past south of the border in South Carolina. All right. The District 50 Senate race was one of the closest in the Mississippi coast, but it's taken another turn with the Wednesday recovery of a thumb drive full of votes. How does that even happen? With all precincts in Tuesday night, incumbent Representative Scott Delano held a 33-vote lead over Biloxi City Councilwoman Dixie Newman. That lead was without the affidavit votes, but Delano declared the victory late Tuesday evening. We look at all these elections and see how many affidavits there are out there. It's very unusual to make a really big difference in the outcome, who told? It doesn't say, but I guess maybe Delano told the Sun Herald Tuesday night. Even though it's razor thin, we expect it to fall in line with what the vote came out with. Yeah, that's what it says. With what the vote came out of those individual precincts. I'm not making it up. It really says that. It wasn't the affidavits, but a thumb drive that changed the race Wednesday afternoon. There was a drive that was left out from the D'Iberville, I don't know, Iberville Civic Center. That's awfully foreign sounding for Mississippi, but D'Iberville Civic Center. Newman's campaign manager, Holly Gibbs, said those numbers were never counted. Harrison County Circuit Clerk Connie Ladner's office produced that thumb drive today and added it in. So what should we say? Suspicious? Not suspicious? The thumb drive and all the affidavits, absentees, and what could be counted is what put Dixie up by 1 vote. Gibbs said there are still 3 affidavit votes that have yet to be certified. Those 3 voters have 96 hours to bring their photo IDs to Ladner's office in the Gulfport courthouse. Those individuals and their votes are only known by Ladner. In Mississippi, a voter ID law went into effect in 2014, requiring voters to show photo identification at the polls. If a voter showed up without one, they can still vote, but they have 96 hours to show their ID to the election official to certify those votes. Newman told the Sun Herald that the affidavits may not even affect the District 50 race, but that won't be known until Thursday morning, and it's Friday now. So what the F? I guess we can go and try and follow up. Kate, maybe you could dig that up for us by the time we get through with this. He's doing a lot of Googling this morning. All right. Newman said this turn of events has been crazy, but also, there's a lot of words left in here, but also a blessing. Has been crazy, but also, I guess you could get away with that one instead of having to say, but is also a blessing. I'm so proud of my supporters and campaign for keeping with a positive message. I do not like this article. We never have done anything but keep a positive message, Newman said. We prayed and placed it in God's hands. Are we talking about a primary here by any chance? I guess it must be, right? It's not November. Okay, could be a special election. I don't know. We prayed and placed it in God's hands. I couldn't be more excited for this result, but we will stay humble and wait until it's official. Delano's campaign has not yet responded to our request for comment, but a statement was posted on his campaign Facebook page. This election has not been certified, Delano posted. There have been some additional issues with recent number counts today. This is why we stress that every vote counts. I'm going to stand strong on this. Gosh, that's so strong. And make sure we have a fair election, because 2 Republicans are contesting it, is my guess. And so that's got to be fair. But if it's a general election and there's a Democrat involved, to hell with that. I really don't know. I have no idea whether they are, in fact, both Republicans contesting a primary election or both Democrats contesting a primary election. I have no idea. Let's see. We should look this up. So who are the contestants here and see if there's new news on this? Or first, I guess I can check Twitter and see whether Kate Sherrill found this thing or not. No, not so far. All right. Well, it's not your job, and maybe you're not even ready to listen yet, and you'll listen to the podcast later. Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. You're not on the payroll here. No one is. So what's the difference? All right, let's see. So our contestants here, shall we look up Scott Delano and see if there's news about the guy? I don't know. This is we're really flying by the seat of our pants on today's show, which is great because our pants can fly. And really, who expected that to happen? Well, Scott Delano is a Republican, just in case you want to know, according to Ballotpedia. There's nothing newer than the reports from the other day, though they said they would find out by Thursday, and it's Friday now. He's got a Twitter account. Let's go look at that. You'd think if he lost the race or won the race, he would tweet at some point. He's tweeted some weird imagery. I'll just say that. We'll go take a look at that in just a minute. No, he too, not very active. Oddly, his last tweet, also July 18th, just like Charles C.W. Cook. That's right. They both disappeared on the same day. By the way, what is this weird image that he has sent here? Because, it's a Will Ferrell still from Saturday Night Live. So, okay. That helps explain the weirdness of the image at the very least. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to drop that for now. What was the name of our other contestant here? The Biloxi county or city councilwoman. Dang. All right. I got to scroll around here and see. There we are. Dixie Newman. Who could forget Dixie Newman? Now I'm just kind of curious. Is there any news on her? Did she report anything? All right. In goes Dixie Newman. We'll search that. Let's see. What does Ballotpedia tell us about Dixie Newman, by the way? Curious to see what stage of the election we're in. Republican. Okay, so it's wow. Okay. Some headshot she's got going on there. All right, the lovely people running off there in the Republican primary. Let's see. So back to, is there any news about Dixie? We'll have to, nothing immediately. I'll check again here. Voting official speaks out after magical thumb drive mix up in Coast Senate race. That also 1 day ago. Still no news. So I guess they didn't figure that one out. The closest I've got is 14 hours ago with Delano Newman race still left to be decided. So I don't think we've missed any announcements or updates in the news on that front. All right, thanks very much, Kate, for sharing that one with us. Let's see what else is up for discussion. Oh, Jack Ox chiming in with something. A Ben Shapiro comment here. Let's see. She says, why did Dems complain about criticism of Obama when Biden is running on Obama's record? Do they think Joe cannot be criticized if he pretends to be Obama? I don't know. I think you meant to confuse with that question. It was a rhetorical question because the answer is, well, you should be able to criticize Obama. So I guess we got the right answer out of that one. Sure, you can criticize Obama, and yeah, especially when Biden is running on Obama's record. I mean, as you know, it's one of the things I hate the most about primaries. And I'm not a good person to ask that question. Well, maybe I'm great at it. I answered the way you would answer. So that's got to be pretty good, right? But yeah, one of those I hate the primaries moments. It always makes me annoyed and uncomfortable when it devolves to the fighting stage and trying to eliminate competition by taking them out with a slam dunk on them, when we'd all much rather hear about how much better than Donald Trump any single one of these Democrats would be. And while we have our policy preferences, we shouldn't forget what we're here to do. But okay. Anyway, yeah. But she's sent me the tweet of I guess it's other people. I don't know, waiting for Biden's next gaffe here, and I guess you won't have to wait long. All right, we'll be right back after this 1 minute break. Try and regroup, and then bring you all the news and items that have been neglected all week that we keep saying we're going to use Friday for. I didn't know it was going to go this way. I'm sorry. I'll be right back. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Breaking news. My news is broken. So I'm sorry to tell you about that one, but I'm going to dive into Pocket at this point and turn away from the immediacy of Twitter. And I've got a special news bulletin for Bill in Portland, Maine, because those of you who follow his account are almost assuredly, I don't see how you could not be, aware of his interest in the local squirrels. I thought I would share this fascinating story, which looks too long to, honestly, it's not very long, but too long to waste our time on when we have so many things to look into. But I thought you would be interested in this, and I have to bring it up for a wider audience. Where is this from? I don't even know what the original, what's the publication? I found it in Pocket. It was one of those, if any of you use Pocket or similar read it later type apps, there are very often suggested stories. Sometimes they're really pretty good. Sometimes they're stupid. Sometimes they're both. Like this one here, when squirrels were one of America's most popular pets. Did you even know that there was such a thing? Atlas Obscura, I guess, is the original source of this. Natalie Zarelli writing this thing. And I thought it was pretty amazing. And, it's illustrated of a photo of a guy with, he's old timey. You can tell because it's in black and white and he's wearing a stupid hat. And, that's the international sign of old timiness. And, is this who it is? Is this who's wearing the stupid hat? Look at this. Now I'm reading the caption. I feel silly. This is a picture of Pete the Squirrel, the famous Pete the Squirrel, who was a pet of President Harding. Now, this is a photo from the Library of Congress, and I don't know what President Harding looks like. Does anybody know offhand? Was President Harding given to stupid hats? This is bad news. Ill-fitting suit. It's old-timey, I guess, this too. One of the worst-dressed presidents I've ever seen, quite frankly, besides Donald Trump, to be honest. And I now have to take a look here. Warren Harding, right? I thought he was like a dashing, good-looking guy, and I don't know, maybe I have it wrong. But wasn't he... well, let me take a look here. I thought he was like the first president elected after women's suffrage, and everybody was like, oh, he was terrible, but he got elected because women voted for him because he was handsome. But I don't know, that doesn't look like... That's my image of Warren Harding here. But maybe he was young when this picture was... I got no idea. Maybe this is just the caretaker of Pete the Squirrel, but he's kissing the squirrel. So, yeah, either there's an inappropriate relationship going on here of some kind, and the relationship is as between a squirrel and President of the United States, or the president is going to be furious that the squirrel is cheating on him with the caretaker, and besides which, how could you go with that guy? Look at how stupid his hat is. This is a hell of a story. And I mean, should I tweet this now? If you're listening live, you can't wait anymore, but you probably Googled the story off of my excited reading of the headline for you. Why won't this tweet work? All right, I'm going to tweet this thing out because reasons, and then you can all look, oh, I should have tagged it with the KITM thing. All right, well, I screwed everything up today. When were squirrels one of America's most popular pets? Well, I guess during the Warren Harding administration, but even earlier than that, it appears to be the case, because the lead tells me in 1722, which was not even during Warren Harding's administration. In 1722, a pet squirrel named Mungo passed away. It was a tragedy. Mungo escaped its confines and met its fate at the teeth of a dog. Benjamin Franklin, friend of the owner, immortalized the squirrel with a tribute. Quote, "Few squirrels were better accomplished, for he had a good education, had traveled far, and had seen much of the world," Franklin wrote, adding, "Thou art fallen by the fangs of wanton, cruel Ranger." I assume that was the name of the dog. How exciting. Really rather amazing. Mourning a squirrel's death wasn't as uncommon as you might think when Franklin wrote Mungo's eulogy. In the 18th and 19th centuries, squirrels were fixtures in American homes, especially for children. While colonial Americans kept many types of wild animals as pets, squirrels were the most popular, according to Catherine Grier's Pets in America, being relatively easy to keep. And I guess Bill could tell you about that. He doesn't keep them, he just feeds them. By the 1700s, a golden era of squirrel ownership was in full swing. By the way, it was the squirrels' rights movement, I think, that largely was responsible for the revolution in this country. And I'm a little aghast at the archaic notion that one can own a squirrel, but all right. Squirrels were sold in markets, you see what I'm talking about, and found in the homes of wealthy urban families. And portraits of well-to-do children holding a reserved, polite upper-class squirrel attached to a gold chain leash were proudly displayed, some of which are currently at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, by the way. Most pet squirrels were American gray squirrels, though red squirrels and flying squirrels were also around, enchanting the country. It says, with their devil-may-care attitudes and fluffy bodies. I think Bill would largely agree, by the way, but the whole world is talking about these beautiful squirrels that are being kept as pets, I guess. This is the equivalent of what's going on. Should I continue with this? This is crazy. No, I will let you all read it. We'll move on to more political topics. Some of you are doubtless entertained, but certain others of you almost assuredly would like to know a little bit more about what's going on in the political world. Well, for one thing, these squirrels are cheating in elections, and they're carrying weapons wherever they go. So there you go. And they're also gray supremacists. Just thought I'd throw that one in there. So the red squirrels are very upset about that. There's real news elsewhere. I better get started, really, honestly. Where do I go first? This one you knew already. The administration is full of immigration hardliners. There, you have the news now. I got to move on to this second one here. Jerry Nadler. He's out. He's not out as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's out as an impeachment backer. Nadler, this is not his colon speaking. This is Nadler, punctuation mark, : this is formal impeachment proceedings. This is Rachel Frazen, we'll say. Her entry in The Hill that rag we all love to hate because they tweet so much. House Judiciary Chairman, Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler, Democrat of New York, in case you didn't know, said yesterday, that his House panel is conducting an impeachment inquiry into President Trump. So it's over. You don't need to ask for it anymore, and you don't need to pretend you're for it or avoid being for it. It's happening. And we heard as much a little while ago, but now we have the chairman making the same remark. Nadler added that the committee will decide by the year's end whether to refer articles of impeachment to the House floor. That's, let's see, it's August, so he's got till September, October, November, December. 4 months until, well, let's see, did I count that right? Until September to October, November to December to the beginning. So 5 months. That's too long. All right, well, at any rate, interesting to hear. Says he'll decide by year's end, and then he'll delay a little bit more, whether to refer articles of impeachment to the House floor. This is formal impeachment proceedings. We learned as much from seeing the lawsuit filed, in which they sidled right up to saying that this was formal impeachment hearings and are trying to use that impression anyway to try to pry loose the 6E grand jury information, among other redacted items from the Mueller report. But here's Nadler just blurting it out. This is a formal impeachment proceedings. This is formal impeachment proceedings. Nadler said in an interview with CNN's Aaron Burnett, where you could hardly miss it, apparently, though I did. We are investigating all the evidence. We're gathering the evidence, and we will, at the conclusion of this, hopefully by the end of the year, vote articles of impeachment to the House floor. Get it? Vote to vote articles of impeachment. Whew. Or we won't. That's a decision we'll have to make, but that's exactly the process we're in right now. They're either in it or they're not. They'll decide to or they won't. You see what's going on here? All right, it's a little difficult to follow, but we got it. Nadler's remarks Thursday come as other House Democrats continue to urge his panel to launch an impeachment inquiry. More than half of Democrats in the lower chamber have said they support launching an inquiry. The House Judiciary Committee is investigating whether Trump should be impeached, Nadler noted. The fact is, we are doing an investigation. We are investigating the facts. This is starting to sound like Trump. Investigating the evidence, Nadler said. We are going into court to get witnesses, all with a view toward deciding and recommending to the House whether to impeach the president. Nadler has urged Speaker Nancy Pelosi to back a formal impeachment inquiry, but Pelosi has cautioned that impeachment would be divisive and ultimately unsuccessful. Nadler, however, said the Speaker, quote, has been very cooperative in the Judiciary Committee's investigative efforts, adding that she signed off on recent court filings that clarified whether to call his panel's investigation an impeachment inquiry. Democratic Representative David, what's the pronunciation again? Cicilline? Did we decide on that? Confirmed, we did, I don't remember. Terrible with this stuff. Confirmed Thursday that the committee had begun impeachment proceedings, and we learned the pronunciation when we read this whole thing. As Jerry Nadler just said to CNN, we have begun impeachment proceedings in the Judiciary Committee. He tweeted, let's see where the facts take us and hold this president accountable. But Doug Collins, the committee's ranking member, pushed back on their characterization. Chairman Nadler is either uninformed about what formal impeachment inquiry is, or he is deliberately misleading the American public to score cheap political points. Which is it, Chairman? He tweeted, and the answer is neither. You don't know what an impeachment inquiry is, and you just want there not to be one. All right. Nadler's comments came after the House Judiciary Democrats last month asked the federal court to provide the House with confidential grand jury information. You got that. On Wednesday, the panel filed a lawsuit against former White House counsel Don McGahn. That's also in the news, and we didn't discuss it, I think. McGahn has defied the committee's subpoena for testimony regarding allegations that Trump obstructed justice in Mueller's investigation. That's true. Nadler indicated that his decision would be made, Nadler said Monday his committee would decide whether to move forward with articles of impeachment by late fall. Now, in this version of it, warned such a decision requires certain conditions. Nadler indicated that his decision would be made after court rulings on several cases, including Democrats' efforts to obtain redacted information from Mueller's report on Russia's election interference and whether to enforce the panel's subpoena against McGahn and other former aides who have declined to testify about their time in the administration at the request of the White House. All right, so we got that. We're up to speed on that one. Back into pocket. There's more. How about this one next? Harry Reid to Dems. He's going to speak to us here just a moment in the Daily Beast. Sam Stein put this one together. Harry Reid to Dems. Kill the filibuster to tackle the climate crisis. The former majority leader has some thoughts about what his party should do should it return to power. What a great idea. And I just wanted to say it's very gratifying to see this as a mainstream topic for discussion. And now it's okay to talk about because the former Democratic leader in the Senate is endorsing this. And I'm happy to see that all my work to make it a legitimate topic of discussion has paid off, even though people are largely going to forget that very quickly. Okay. Las Vegas is our dateline here. As the Democratic Party debates what to prioritize should it take power following the 2020 elections, former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid offered his former fellow members, a stern directive, sternly worded and everything, and an ambitious proposal. Tackle climate change legislation first, Reid said, and if it requires eliminating the filibuster to do it, well, so be it. The answer is yes, Reid said, when asked if he would scrap the Senate rule requiring 60 votes for legislation if it allowed the party to pass a bill addressing the climate crisis. The number one priority is climate change. I didn't feel like that was the case when he was in office, but okay. There is nothing that affects my children, grandchildren, and their children right now more than climate. I'm glad to hear it. Reid's admonition represents the most notable case of a party elder arguing that global warming needs to be the Democrats' number one agenda item, but it is also premised on three decidedly significant and to varying degrees unlikely developments: that Democrats retake the White House, that they retake the Senate, and that 50 of those senators decide they are comfortable changing the rules of their chamber to get rid of the filibuster. It's happened before, though with different stakes. In 2013, Reid and his fellow Senate Democrats scrapped the 60-vote threshold for most judicial appointments, saying that Republican opposition to Barack Obama's nominees had left them with no other choice. In 2017, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell followed suit by scrapping the 60-vote threshold for Supreme Court nominees and cabinet officials, saying that Reid had laid the procedural and intellectual foundation for them to do so. Of course, I will tell you that the procedural and intellectual foundation for them to do so was laid before that by Republicans threatening to do exactly the same thing over judges, and even that had precedent as well. All right. McConnell has resisted calls, including from President Donald Trump, to go even further and end the filibuster for actual legislation, but Reid said that the day will come for that as well. It's not a question of if, he told the Daily Beast in an interview from his office at the University of Las Vegas. It is a question of whether we get rid of the filibuster. When we get rid of the filibuster. Sorry, it's gone. It's gone. Reid has spoken about the inevitability of ending the filibuster before, but he has never been so explicit in saying it should be done early upon the Democrats retaking the Senate and for the purposes of passing climate change legislation. In doing so, the former majority leader was issuing a warning of sorts to those Democrats currently running for president. As the party's candidates find themselves mired in a debate over the ambition of their respective health care proposals, Reid was making the case that other legislation would prove as, if not more, imperative and in all likelihood less difficult to tackle. Reid should know he was in Congress when Bill Clinton was tripped up by health care reform in his first term, which is interesting enough. Yes, he ran the Senate when the passage of health care reform cost his party dearly in the 2010 midterms, and he watched closely as a failed health care reform push doomed Republicans in 2018. It was the hardest thing I ever did, Reid said of pushing through the Affordable Care Act. Few people are as knowledgeable as Reid about the possibilities and limitations of moving matters through the United States Senate. He's removed from the chamber now, having retired in 2016 amid health setbacks and questions about his political future. A diagnosis of pancreatic cancer came after retirement, but Reid said his health was good. And in our 40-minute interview last week, his mood was notably upbeat. It was clear that his distance from national politics was more geographical than operational. Reid keeps in touch with former aides of his who occupy top posts on Senator Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaigns, and candidates and operatives still take the pilgrimage to his offices and home to seek advice from the sage from Searchlight. Before our interview, Mayor Pete Buttigieg came to see Reid to discuss the 2020 race. The senator reiterated his position that he would not endorse a candidate prior to the Nevada caucus and said that his vaunted political machine would not get involved either. He also studiously avoided tipping his hand as to who among the field had left him impressed. In one moment, Reid dismissed talk that former Vice President Joe Biden had lost his proverbial fastball, saying that any candidate under persistent fire, as Biden was in a recent debate, would come across as a touch shaky. I think anybody that attributes this to his age is just wrong, said Reid. He runs onto the stage. He looks like $1 million, so I'm not going to do that. But Reid wasn't entirely unsparing when it came to Biden either. The two men found themselves at odds at various points during the Obama years when Biden cut deals with McConnell that Reid believed gave up too much and burned the party's negotiating leverage. And Reid found the former vice president's insistence that he could work with Republicans again to be divorced from modern political realities. I have served with Joe Biden for 34 years, Reid said, and I know that's who he is. He's been always easy to get along with, and he was Obama's guy to go work things out with McConnell on several occasions that I didn't really appreciate. So I know he feels that way, but for Trump, I think there would still be some of that going on. I think Trump has made it improbable, if not impossible. Though they've been colleagues for decades, Biden and Reid are decidedly different political creatures. The former is a moderate-minded optimist, comforted by the notion that America can return to a past ideal. The latter has grown more liberal over time and more outwardly cynical about America's political institutions. There is still some traditionalism to Reid. He scoffed, for example, at the push among progressives to try and end the Electoral College in favor of a national popular presidential vote. The Electoral College is unfair in many instances, he explained, but I don't know how you're going to change it. I just don't know how. They do, though, so I'm not worried about that. And I will remind you that for the longest time, even though I think he knew the answer was that you could easily change filibuster precedents, if not rules, with a simple majority vote, he insisted publicly that that was not the case, and anybody who thought so was just being naive, and then we won. Anyway, he has allowed himself to drift and dream when it comes to other structural reforms, like term limits to change the composition of the courts. Maybe I have no basis for talking about this because I'm in my 70s, in my 80s before too long. I have never favored term limits, said Reid, but when the Constitution was written, no one ever expected judges to live to be 80 years old. Now they're going into their 90s in some places around the federal court system. So I think we have to jiggle that around a little bit. I think that's something we need. And by the way, it would be just as difficult, if not more difficult, to impose term limits for judges than it would be to get rid of the Electoral College. On its face, they're both constitutional amendments and both equally difficult, and so it would be ridiculous to say one could be done and the other not, just based on your preference for them. But on top of all that, there's the question of whether or not the interstate compact for binding your Electoral College electors to the winner of the national popular vote can't simply undo the effects of the Electoral College without actually changing the Constitution. There's another open question about would it be constitutional to do that, given that the Electoral College is written into the Constitution. Well, if any challenges have survived, I don't know if there have been any, to the state laws that mandate that, or mandate against unfaithful electors, if those have survived, then I don't see why the compact should fail. But then again, Maybe he's right about the judges needing to be replaced because a lot of them are partisan hacks and they'll just vote for the outcome they want rather than the legal principle that they think applies. All right, just to finish up here, one thing Reid is dead set on is that his party must let go of the past. Our nostalgia for a bygone era, he argued, often colors over how bad the past could be. But beyond that, there is no practical upside for Democrats to cling to decorums and traditions when the other party does not. Told, for example, that Senator Doug Jones had floated the idea of restoring the 60-vote threshold for judges should Democrats take back the Senate, Reid could barely contain a laugh. That's a joke. That is a joke, he said. Well, you're from Alabama. What the hell else are you going to say? Okay, Reid took a second and composed himself before offering a final point that seemed to be as much about explaining and defending his own career arc as it was about Jones. You can't go back, he said. You can't. It's done. I don't really know what that added, but it's a nicer finish than some of the articles we've read in the recent past. So thanks very much to Sam for filling us in on that one. Back to Pocket here. Which direction to go? Man. All right. I mentioned to you that there was a struggle among immigration hardliners in the administration. I want to bring that one back up. It's a CNN report. Homeland Security power struggle. McClellan fights for control against immigration hardliners. I don't want to root for McClellan in all of this, but it sounds like he too may be on his way out. I don't know. Is he? Yes, he's another one of the acting people. Oh, and I did go and get the audio clip that I promised Armando. Though for days I couldn't remember what audio clip did I say I wanted to get. I wanted to get the one from SNL, the Master Thespian, right? Every time we come up and say someone is the acting Homeland Security Secretary. Acting! Right, exactly. So I had thought, though, that the clip was, I was pretty sure there was one that he said, I am merely acting. But I guess I misremember it. And the signature delivery of it appears to be just acting. But then they praise one another for being brilliant afterwards. Acting! Brilliant! Thank you! Thank you! Thank you! Yes, exactly. Okay, so next time we'll be ready for that. Although I think I need to pump up the volume on those a little bit. That'll be helpful. Anyway, he's the acting Homeland Security Director, Kevin McClellan. Apparently, the story harkening back to Friday, June 21st, when Homeland Security Secretary McClellan went to the White House prepared to resign. Days earlier, President Donald Trump had issued a vague threat to deport millions of undocumented immigrants, providing few details of the effort and surprising officials within his own administration. McClellan was concerned that the operation was half-baked. Yeah, it was. And too far-reaching in scope. And he felt undermined by subordinate immigration hardliners who had a direct line to the president over the issue that Trump cares most about. Two sources familiar with the matter said, then acting Director of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Mark Morgan had begun hyping an upcoming operation targeting undocumented migrant families for deportation and was speaking directly with the president about it, according to a source familiar with the situation. Arriving at the White House, McClellan was met with the acting White House Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney. See how many of these acting officials there are in all of this? So, also met by White House Chief of Staff's Mulvaney's deputy, Emma Doyle, who I guess doesn't get the acting designation. The raids, he said, would anger Democrats and jeopardize the administration's request for emergency funding for the border. They should be conducted in phases rather than all at once, and he argued the department needed more time to build out the proper messaging, said a former senior administration official. But by the way, you see what's happening here? McClellan goes and says the raids would anger Democrats and jeopardize the administration's request for emergency funding. Did they? They did anger Democrats. But did they jeopardize the funding? They did not. And that's sort of disappointing. It's interesting that Republicans went into us thinking, well, of course it's going to jeopardize the vote on this because Democrats would never simply rubber stamp our request for more funding, particularly in the face of threats like you just made. But as it turns out, nah, not so much. We kind of did roll over for that one. And yeah, the argument was made, you gotta be there and provide funding. You can't complain about the conditions and then not do something to improve them. But the argument always was on the other side that they're not going to use the funding to improve conditions. They're probably going to, if anything, do I don't know what. They'll buy themselves apps to play on their phone with it. I don't think they're going to use them for the betterment of conditions. Well, whatever. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, with a brand new interruption to say thanks to all of you who support the show. Remember when I told you that our average monthly donation was about $7, for which you were getting 2 great hours of news and entertainment 5 days a week, and how that came out to about 70 cents an hour? That's a pretty good deal, except it's wrong. The math actually works out closer to 17 cents an hour. It is hard to beat a deal like that, and even harder to send your kids to college on. Thankfully, Patreon.com makes it easy to make that work. Patreon, Patreon.com, is the simple, secure way to make recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Just search for me or the show name on the site, and they make it easy to crowdfund the show so that the power of our numbers can keep the show going for just a few bucks a month. Once again, thanks so much for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's finish up. Did we read more of the CNN piece? I mean, I guess the upshot of all this, I just wanted to kind of highlight the fact that McCleenan was on the bubble, only a couple of months into the job as, not as secretary, but rather as acting secretary. And you should look out for his departure at some point soon, I guess. And also point out that, the raids that happened just in the last day or so, I guess in the beginning of August, are leftover from late June when the president said they were going to happen immediately, but then he was going to delay them and maybe it would be 2 weeks. And it turned out to be a month and a half. And just one of those, another of those examples. I guess another lesson in how to read a Trump comment. They'll be delayed for 2 weeks. Nah, it's going to be more than that. All right. I will include that article, the full article, for those of you to read and sort through. And Stephen Miller, I guess, figures prominently in all of it because his bald ass shows up in the photo montage illustrating the story. All right. Now what? I'm going to skip over the Epstein stuff for today. And jump down to some things that have been waiting for a while here. Oh, yeah, by the way, here's a couple of other things I wanted to take a look at as I'm scrolling. This is a great thing about scrolling through Pocket and all of this. Is this something I can safely divert to here or no? I'm just sort of curious. All right, well, that'll probably be something for another day. All right, back into Pocket and continue scrolling. Just have to do some self-editing as I go on here. I know down here somewhere is, here we are. Back to some reporting from The Guardian. How long ago are we talking about here? Let's just open it up. I kept referring to it when I was discussing that I had watched The Great Hack and was looking at some articles that connected the Russian interference in our election to the Cambridge Analytica / Russia possibly work in the Brexit discussions. Okay, the Brexit elections. All right, The Guardian's piece here is from July 30th, not all that long ago, but it feels like forever. Secret texts cast light on UK's early role in Trump-Russia inquiry. Okay, let's find out what this is all about. Senior MI5 and FBI officials shared concerns about, quote, our strange situation in 2016. 2 of the most senior intelligence officials in the U.S. and UK privately shared concerns about our strange situation, as they put it, as the FBI launched its 2016 investigation into whether Donald Trump's campaign was colluding with Russia, The Guardian has learned. Text messages between Andrew McCabe, and everyone knows how controversial Andrew McCabe's text messages are, text messages between him and who was at the time the deputy director of the FBI, and Jeremy Fleming, his then counterpart at MI5, now the head of GCHQ, also reveal their mutual surprise at the result of the EU referendum, which some U.S. officials regarded as a wake-up call, according to a person familiar with the matter. While Russia has previously been viewed as a country that would seek to interfere in Western elections, the Brexit vote was viewed by some within the FBI as a sign that Russian activities had possibly been successful, the person said. Their exchanges offer new insights into the start of the FBI's Russia investigation and how British intelligence appears to have played a key role in the early stages, which, of course, I think Trump supporters say, see, the Steele dossier, he's from Britain, that's the connection. I don't really know that that's there, but we'll see whether they fill in any blanks. Their exchanges offer new insights into the start of the investigation, as we say, and how British intelligence appears to have played a key role in the early stages. One exchange in August 2016 has Fleming noting that members of the FBI and MI5 had, quote, met on our strange situation, a veiled reference to discussions about Russian activities, according to the source. The text messages between the two men were infrequent and cryptic and did not contain specific or sensitive materials, but occurred with some regularity after the referendum in June of 2016. A spokesperson for McCabe declined to comment. The exchanges underscore a sensitive issue in the U.S., namely the role of foreign intelligence services in the FBI's decision to initiate an investigation into the Trump campaign. On the 31st of July, 2016, the FBI opened a covert counterintelligence investigation codenamed Crossfire Hurricane into the then presidential candidate's possible collusion with Russia. The investigation was eventually taken over by the special counsel Robert Mueller, who has said there were multiple systematic efforts to interfere in our election by Russia. Mueller's 448-page report did not establish a criminal conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia, but did identify incidents in which Trump attempted to obstruct justice in the investigation and did not clear the president of wrongdoing. U.S. and UK intelligence agencies frequently share information, but the exchanges between McCabe and Fleming appear to reflect a desire for a direct line of communication, given what was seen as a developing problem on both sides of the Atlantic. In his text message about the August 2016 meeting, Fleming appeared to be making a reference to Peter Strzok, whose text messages are the controversial ones I was thinking of and not McCabe's. But Strzok, a senior FBI official who traveled to London that month to meet with the Australian diplomat Alexander Downer. Downer had agreed to speak with the FBI about a Trump campaign advisor, George Papadopoulos, who had told him that Russia had dirt on Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee in the race. The meeting was first reported by the New York Times. When Boris Johnson, the UK Foreign Secretary at the time, was asked in November of 2017 whether Russia had played any role in British elections, he told MPs in a select committee that he had not seen any evidence of such an occurrence. When asked in a follow-up if Russia had sought to play a role, Johnson said, "I don't know about sought to play, but as far as I know, they played no role." The new revelation comes as authorities in the UK are investigating the funding behind a pro-Brexit campaign and whether it might have included illegal foreign donations. The National Crime Agency, that's a hell of a name, the National Crime Agency, or NCA, is investigating the insurance executive and political donor Aaron Banks, who was suspected by the UK's Electoral Commission of not being the true source of £8 million in funding to the Leave.eu campaign. The matter was referred to the NCA by the Commission after it said it had reasonable grounds to suspect a number of criminal offenses. Banks has said there was, quote, no Russian money, no interference behind the £8 million he gave to the unofficial Brexit campaign. The Guardian reported in 2017 that Britain's spy agencies played a crucial role in alerting their counterparts in Washington to contacts between members of Trump's campaign team and Russian intelligence operatives. GCHQ became aware in late 2015 of suspicious, quote, interactions, unquote, between figures connected to Trump and known or suspected Russian agents, a source close to UK intelligence said. This intelligence was passed to the U.S. as part of a routine exchange of information, they said. Strzok and almost every senior FBI official who was involved in the initial Trump investigation has since left the FBI, including McCabe. In many cases, they were dismissed by Trump officials, ostensibly for unrelated reasons. Fleming was elevated to head of GCHQ in 2017. During his period as a senior official at MI5, Fleming served as director for intelligence collection and led MI5's preparations for the 2012 Olympics. He was appointed deputy director of MI5 in 2013. So interesting difference, I guess, as between the UK and the US, whereas in the US, everybody who was involved in that exchange of information has been fired by the Trump administration. In the UK, they've been, I guess, presumably promoted. I don't know whether, I'm not certain that it's definitely a promotion to go from head of MI5 to head of GCHQ, but I suspect that it's viewed that way. Very interesting, and we'll see if anything comes of it. And yeah, I guess they're hinting here, but they don't say so in this article. But I guess, the right wing here in the United States will pick up on this and say, see, what they're admitting to here is that British intelligence planted the Steele dossier with the FBI. But they had every opportunity to say so here in The Guardian, and they did not. So I find that rather interesting. Not that that's going to stop the Republicans from making that claim. That's, essentially what they're going to use that report to, how they're going to take that report. And what they'll do with it in the future. I don't know that they'll have any luck with it. I'll just say that's likely what's coming up next. All right, let's see. Other items. Is there anything else like really on the older side that I have not brought forward? There are a few things down here. Maybe we'll take a look at these. One thing I should at least mention that I don't think we did was a now few weeks old New York Times report. All 50 states, apparently, were targeted by Russia. This according to both the New York Times and the Washington Post reporting this. I have Tegan Goddard's Political Wire as an original note to these sources here. The Senate Intelligence Committee concluded Thursday, this was back in the end of July, that election systems in all 50 states were targeted by Russia in 2016, which we're never really sure what that means. Like, targeted by Russia. I wish I could break into that in Oregon. But I can't because they have security and I'm a terrible hacker. Would that count as targeting them or logging on and saying maybe the password is password? Is that targeting, or do they make real actual efforts? I don't know. This doesn't tell us, but maybe the articles will in more detail. But the Senate Intelligence Committee has apparently concluded that all 50 states were targeted by Russia in 2016, largely undetected, by the way, by the states and federal officials at the time. But at the demand of American intelligence agencies, the committee was forced to redact its findings so heavily that key lessons for the 2020 election are blacked out, the New York Times reports. Another quote here that says, while details of many of the hackings directed by Russian intelligence, particularly in Illinois and Arizona, are well known, the committee's report describes a Russian intelligence effort more far-reaching than the federal government has previously acknowledged. The Washington Post reporting here, it's not just the Russians anymore, as Iranians and others turn up disinformation efforts ahead of the 2020 vote. And this sounds like maybe something that we should take a look at these two articles and close things out for the weekend on these. I don't know if there's any prophetic warnings we can give you, other than that the president is probably on his way out for a golf vacation and will likely make everything worse by raging on Twitter in the morning and then disappearing in the afternoon to go play golf, or early morning or mid-morning to mid-afternoon to play golf. And then he gets exhausted, takes a nap, and then he gets angry again around Fox News prime time and starts tweeting again. Okay. The New York Times piece here, though. Russia targeted election systems in all 50 states. David Sanger and Katie Edmondson wrote this back in July 25th. The Senate Intelligence Committee, of course, so we read this part here. The bipartisan report's warning that the United States remains vulnerable in the next election is clear. Its findings were so heavily redacted at the insistence of American intelligence agencies, though, that even some key recommendations for 2020 were blacked out. The report, the first volume of several to be released from the committee's investigation into Russia's election interference, came 24 hours after the former special counsel Robert Mueller warned that Russia was moving again to interfere as we sit here. While details of many of the hackings directed by Russian intelligence, as I said earlier, in Illinois and Arizona are well known, they described an unprecedented level of activity against state election infrastructure, intended largely to search for vulnerabilities in the security of the election system. So, certainly no word that all states were, in fact, had their systems penetrated. But you would expect that they would attempt to hack their way into all 50 states. It would be remarkable and surprising if they actually bothered to target which ones they should costlessly try to interfere with, right? It probably costs next to nothing to try to get in, so why not do it? They already have the people dedicated to it. All right, so let's see. We won't read that full piece, but we'll include it in the roundup. And let's take a look at the Washington Post one here as well. It's not just the Russians anymore, as Iranians and others turn up disinformation efforts ahead of the 2020 vote. This a piece also from July 25th, Craig Timberg and Tony Rahm. A recent tweet, they say, from Alicia Hernan, whose Twitter account described her as a wife, mother, and lover of peace. Fantastic things to be, really. Did not mince words about her feelings for President Trump. That stupid moron doesn't get that by creating bad guys, spewing hate-filled words, and creating fear of others, his message is spreading to fanatics around the world. Or maybe he does. I don't know, that sounds kind of mincing, doesn't it? Anyway, she didn't mince words, but ending with, or maybe he does. All right. That March 16th tweet, directed to a Hawaii congressman, was not the work of an American voter venting her frustration. This is why it's interesting. That account, Alicia Hernan 3, was what disinformation researchers call a sock puppet, a type of fictitious online persona used by Russians when they were seeking to influence the 2016 presidential election. But it was Iranians and not Russians who created Alicia Hernan 3, complete with a picture of a blonde woman with large round-framed glasses and a turtleneck sweater. Okay. It was one of more than 7,000 phony accounts from Iran that Twitter has shut down this year alone. And Iran is far from the only nation that has, within its borders, substantial capacity to wage Russian-style influence operations in the United States ahead of next year's election. That means American voters are likely to be targeted in the coming campaign season by more foreign disinformation than ever before, say those studying such operations. Besides which, the president has shown no interest in punishing people for doing that, so I guess you can imagine that you'll see more. Although he would, I would think, gladly punish Iranians for it. But he hasn't. Former Special Counsel Robert S. Mueller III echoed the consensus of independent researchers in his congressional testimony Wednesday, back at the end of July, saying of Russian online political interference, it wasn't a single attempt. They're doing it as we sit here, and they expect to do it in the next campaign. He added that many more countries had developed similar capabilities, based in part on the Russian playbook. A new Senate Intelligence Committee report released Thursday found that Russia began targeting the U.S. election system in 2014 and concluded that the attacks had continued into 2017. A short list of countries that host online influence operations with a history of interfering across borders includes Saudi Arabia, Israel, China, the United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela, researchers say. They say it's often not clear exactly who runs these operations, whether it's the governments themselves or other actors, but that they typically echo the talking points of the ruling powers and back their geopolitical goals through tweets, posts, and online videos. Operations in all of these countries, meanwhile, have the means and potentially the motives to seek to influence a U.S. election, shaping up as among the most hotly contested in decades. The influence operations in these countries, however, do not all share Russia's demonstrated preference for Trump and other Republicans. The Iranians, for example, typically oppose Trump in their disinformation messaging, criticizing his decision to pull the United States out of the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran and administration policy on other issues, including Israel and the civil wars in Yemen and Syria, research shows. Multiple foreign actors have demonstrated an ability and willingness to leverage these kinds of influence operations in pursuit of their geopolitical goals, said Lee Foster, head of the intelligence team investigating information operations for FireEye, a cybersecurity firm based in California. We risk the U.S. information space becoming a free-for-all for foreign interference if, as a society, we fail to get an effective grasp on this problem. Researchers for FireEye and other firms have reported suspected Iranian disinformation on most social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Google+, okay, and others. Yes, all right, it still exists, but they're closing that. And on standalone websites as well. In May, FireEye also alleged that U.S. news websites have been tricked into publishing letters to the editor penned by Iranian operatives. Ooh, old school. I like it. I don't. The firm's analysis spotted a number of instances where letters in newspapers in Virginia and Texas appeared to share similar characteristics to accounts on Twitter believed to be a part of an Iran-based disinformation network. FireEye also cataloged fictitious Twitter personas used by Iranians that included a Harvard University student, a Michigan bodybuilder, and an Iranian-American woman from Seattle. Some Iranian Twitter accounts, FireEye found, even sought to impersonate U.S. political candidates, including a Republican from California who ultimately lost the general election for Congress. That account tweeted about the confirmation hearing for U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and a British royal wedding before beginning to promote Iranian interests, including tweets condemning the Saudis' killing of Washington Post contributing columnist Jamal Khashoggi. That's the tip-off. A Republican did that. That's not likely. Some Iranian disinformation accounts, some of which were affiliated with state-controlled news operations, date back several years, but they have grown steadily more sophisticated. Twitter, Facebook, and Google all have identified and taken offline accounts from Iran over the past year for engaging in coordinated deceptive behavior. As part of our public archive of information operations, we have disclosed thousands of accounts and millions of tweets originating in Iran that we have proactively removed, said Yoel Roth, Twitter's head of site integrity. Every year is an election year. Every year is an election year on Twitter, and we will be applying all of our global learnings to protect and enhance conversations around the 2020 election. The Iranian tactics differ somewhat from those of the Russians, who, through the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg, infiltrated the online conversations of a wide range of U.S. political groupings: immigration hardliners, African Americans, veterans, evangelical Christians, environmentalists, with messages attuned to the way those communities were already speaking among themselves on major online platforms. The Iranian operations detected so far tend to lack that complexity, with messaging typically on a single side of an issue in line with government policy goals, countering Israel, for example, as opposed to multiple ones. But there are clear signs of shifting tactics in the accounts identified by Twitter, Facebook, and other companies so far. What's known, the researchers say, may be only small parts of a much larger operations that remain undetected. The Iranian operations were a wake-up call to remind us that the Russians were not the only ones doing information operations, said Camille Francois, chief innovation officer for Graphica, a network analysis firm based in New York that studies online disinformation. Graphica found that among one set of 1,666 Iranian accounts taken down by Twitter in June, about 1 in 4 were tweets in English. Trump was mentioned more than 1,400 times, almost always in critical ways, and with this anti-Trump tweeting peaking in early 2017, in the months around when he took office. Researchers say that both the U.S. government and social media companies have grown more aggressive in battling online disinformation since the 2016 presidential election. Cooperation between the FBI and Silicon Valley has improved markedly. That, of course, now under attack, just like the FBI, according to what we read yesterday coming out of the White House, right? U.S. Cyber Command blocked internet access to Russian disinformation teams during the congressional midterm vote in November of 2018, scrambling operations. Some researchers express hope that this rising aggressiveness may thwart or at least deter some foreign-based influence operations from interfering in future U.S. elections. All the major social media companies have also established teams devoted to combating disinformation, typically by identifying and shutting down networks of fictitious foreign-based accounts on an increasingly large scale. This shift has been dramatic since 2016, when the companies saw foreign threats mainly in terms of traditional cybersecurity, hacks and bugs, as opposed to influence operations conducted by foreign adversaries with substantial resources. The Russian disinformation campaign in 2016 spent more than $1 million a month, Mueller reported in an indictment last year against the Internet Research Agency. As social media companies crack down, the tactics of disinformation teams rapidly shift to improve operational security and effectively evade detection. FireEye, for example, was able to identify some apparently fake Iranian accounts last year because contact numbers for supposed American Twitter users had the 98 country code from Iran, a tactical mistake operatives are unlikely to make again. That was pretty dumb. But among independent researchers and some lawmakers, significant skepticism remains on whether enough has been done to prepare for the threat in 2020. In 2016, Russia used bots and fake accounts to launch an unprecedented social media campaign designed to influence the results of our presidential election, said Mark Warner of Virginia, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee. That playbook is out in the open now, and you can bet that unless the platform companies get their acts together, we're going to see more and more foreign-based actors using it to wreak havoc in our democratic process. The nations hosting significant disinformation capabilities typically first saw them active in seeking to manipulate domestic audiences, shaping public perceptions in line with regime propaganda. The next step often was working regionally by infiltrating online conversations in neighboring countries, as Russia did in Ukraine in 2014, as it annexed Crimea and fomented unrest elsewhere in the country. Disinformation teams in Iran initially developed their tactics while manipulating domestic political conversation, before gradually expanding operations into include more languages, more themes, and foreign targets. Human rights lawyer Simin Kargar of Harvard's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society said Iran for years has harassed journalists, political dissidents, and artists in its traditional internal disinformation campaigns. She has watched as Iran increasingly deployed such tactics against foreign targets. Disinformation teams in Saudi Arabia have worked both internally and to manipulate other Gulf states, including in the nation's struggle with rival Qatar, said researcher Mark Owen Jones, an assistant professor of Middle East studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha, the capital of Qatar. So I guess you have to take that with we'll say a grain of sand. How about that? He said tactics in Saudi Arabia typically involve both sock puppets and automated accounts called bots, echoing official government propaganda, including things said or tweeted by Trump, of all people. Let's see. There's a bit more to this one. I don't know if we're going to get through finishing it all, but let's see. More interesting mentions of disinformation capabilities in Turkey, Egypt, the Philippines, Qatar, Mexico, and others that we really do need to keep an eye on. Oh, one of the things I didn't get to mention this week that probably should have gone into the Friday show so that you could watch it over the weekend. I still have to do some research and understanding of this, but I noticed that the Mexican government has been making appeals to various international bodies seeking international, observation of and protection for Mexican nationals and Mexican American citizens in the United States in the wake of the El Paso shooting in particular. And it occurs to me that this would be similar to the mechanisms, there aren't that many mechanisms available, similar to mechanisms, I think, used by the international community to monitor ethnic cleansing activities in former Yugoslavia, in Rwanda, and elsewhere. Way to go, by the way, in terms of making America great again, Donald Trump, putting us on the ethnic cleansing watch list with the UN. That's terrific. We'll have to revisit that. I expect to see more developments in that field maybe not over the weekend, but in the weeks to come. So fairly warned there. And now, speaking of fairly warned, get ready for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next.
From Daily Kos Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Here's what's coming up. A former FBI official unpacked the details of Andrew McCabe's lawsuit against the Department of Justice. The Trump campaign promoted a QAnon conspiracy theory a week after the FBI called it the threat of domestic terror. Watchdog groups sound the gerrymandering alarm on Alex redistricting workshops, and much, much more coming up next, right here